Yeah, already off the bat, I hate working with this yarn. It kind of looks and feels like paper. So I definitely recommend both of these two yarns. Hi, I'm Rach from Mellow Yarns. If you're new here, welcome to my channel, and if you're not, welcome back. I'm so happy to have you here. Today, I'm excited to review some new yarns that have just been released at Spotlight here in Australia. Most of them come from a new line that sits under Spotlight's in-house yarn brand, Abbey Road, and it's a line called Bagology. And it includes a bunch of interesting kind of novelty yarns and accessories that are all aimed at crochet bags. So as well as different yarns, they also are selling various accessories that you may need to crochet a bag. Things like hardware, straps, a hard base, etc. I'm super excited that Spotlight is coming out with some more interesting products and some products that are really clearly targeted at crocheters rather than knitters. So I was super keen to try some of these yarns out. So I'm going to review these 5 yarns using my 6S system for reviewing yarn, which means I'll consider each yarn in relation to its selection of colours, its softness, its springiness, so whether or not it has a little bit of stretch to it. This can be really important when you are learning to crochet because you'll generally want to stick with yarns that have a bit of stretch because stiff yarns can be really tricky to work with. But having said that, when you're making something like a bag, you actually want a little bit of stiffness and structure to your yarn so that your bag will hold its shape. Stitch definition, so how clearly you can see your stitches. This will impact the final look of your product, but is also really important for beginners to keep in mind because yarns with really poor stitch definition can be really difficult to work with. And finally, price or value for money. So keep watching to find out which ones I love and which ones I hate. And I'll also share some pattern ideas for things that you might want to make with some of these yarns. Okay, so the first yarn I'm going to review is not actually an Abbey Road yarn. It is a Lion brand yarn called Faux Leather. And although it's not part of the new range, it's come out about the same time and also, seems to be a yarn that's particularly ideal for making bags. And to be honest, it's probably the one that I'm most intrigued by. So it's 100% polyester yarn and the size super bulky. I mean, to be honest, I think calling it faux leather is a little bit of a stretch. It doesn't look particularly leathery, but I am really interested to see how this one works out. I think particularly given it's not coloured on both sides. So there's the kind of metallic colour on the outside of the yarn, but then the back is white. With some of the other colours, the backing is black. And so I'm curious to see if this white's going to show through at all when I stitch it up. In terms of colour selection, it comes in 8 colours, all of which are metallic. Only one I would sort of describe as a neutral is the black. So I think this colour range definitely lends itself more to statement bags, purses, that kind of thing. I think I would have liked to see some more natural colours, some colours that are more like a faux leather. But I get that this is a bit of a fun novelty yarn, so I can see why they've kind of gone in a metallic direction. In terms of softness, it's actually softer than I would have expected. Generally for bags, you don't want the yarn to be too soft. You want it to have a bit of structure to it so that it holds its shape. But this actually feels quite nice. I think you could even potentially use it for clothing, maybe something like a bikini top, probably not a jumper, because it is actually quite nice to the touch. I don't think it will be too uncomfortable to work with. And then in terms of springiness, it does actually have a bit of stretch to it. So I'm expecting it shouldn't be too tricky to work up. But to really properly rate it in terms of springiness and also stitch definition, I'm going to need to make up a swatch. So I'm going to make up a swatch in single crochet for this yarn because I think really you would use this for something like a purse or a handbag where you'd want quite tight, short stitches. You wouldn't want gaps in your work. Okay, so for the faux leather yarn, I'm using a 10mm hook as per the recommendation on the yarn label. Yeah, already off the bat, I hate working with this yarn. It's just very sticky. It doesn't really glide over the crochet hook. It doesn't glide through my hands. And so it's quite hard work to stitch with. Yeah, this is horrible. I kind of hate it. I might try a different hook. I wonder if this plastic hook has a little bit too much grip on it. I'll see if my clover hook looks a little bit better. I don't have a 10mm hook in my clovers, so I'll use the largest one that I have, which is a 7mm hook, which to be honest probably isn't big enough, but we'll give it a shot. It's no better. Yeah, I'm not even going to finish this watch. This is so frustrating. It's just really grippy. It's just getting stuck on the hook. It's not really gliding through my hands, and so it's just really frustrating to work with. I really don't think I could make anything out of this yarn because I would just want to throw it out the window. Try and finish this row so you can at least see a row of stitches. Maybe it needs a bigger hook, I don't know. Okay, so there's a row of single crochets, but I kind of hate this yarn. It was super annoying to work with. Like, my hands feel sore. I feel like I was really having to fight to pull it through. I'm actually feeling, even just from that one row, a bit of like burn on my finger from where it's kind of gripping on my skin. So like, there's no way that I would have the patience to use this to make anything of substance. I don't hate how it looks. I think the stitch definition is actually not as great as I thought it would be. The stitches look a bit messy, probably just because I was fighting so much with the yarn that my stitches weren't particularly neat. I think maybe if you're a little bit more practiced or comfortable at working with a yarn like this, it would probably come out a bit neater. The white hasn't shown through as much as I feared, but there are certainly little patches of it poking through. I think if you were really concentrating on allowing the yarn to kind of fold in the right way, you could probably avoid that. The final fabric is very stiff. It doesn't really have drape, which is good. I think this is probably what you want if you are making a bag or a basket or something like that. So I think that stiffness is probably about right for this kind of yarn. But honestly, unless you're a very experienced crocheter, I would not recommend this. Let me know in the comments if you've tried this yarn and found it easier than I have. Maybe there's just something about my technique that doesn't work well with this yarn. So the faux leather yarn is $12 for a ball. You get 120 grams and 23 meters, which works out at about 33 cents a meter. So this is a pretty expensive yarn. I'm not necessarily surprised given the kind of yarn that it is, but this is definitely not a cost-effective or affordable option. And of all the yarns that I've reviewed, it is the most expensive per meter. So the next yarn is one of the bagology yarns. This is a t-shirt yarn. A t-shirt yarn is not a particularly new concept. Essentially, it's a yarn that's made out of strips of stretchy fabric. The t-shirt yarn can be great for things like bags and also home decor, things like baskets, bowls, that kind of thing. So it comes in 8 colours, kind of a mix of neutrals and brights. So it's a decent colour selection, particularly for a kind of novelty yarn like this. Softness, yeah, it's lovely and soft. It's quite nice to the touch. I think it will be quite nice to work with. It is the kind of yarn as well that would be nice against your skin if you were going to make something wearable with it. It's got quite a lot of springiness, which I imagine will make it quite easy to work with. I think it still should hold its shape fairly well though, which is really one of the benefits of t-shirt yarns. So this is also 100% polyester. 100 grams, you get 30 meters worth of yarn in it. They don't mention the yarn weight, but they suggest using a 8mm crochet hook, which kind of suggests it's a fairly bulky, super bulky style yarn. So this yarn recommends a size 8 crochet hook. I don't have an 8 unfortunately, but I have a 7mm hook, so I'll use that. This is so much nicer than the faux leather yarn. It feels really nice and soft on my hands. It's got good stretch to it. It's quite easy. This hook size is probably a little too small, so it is feeling like my stitches are getting a bit tight. Definitely a very stretchy yarn, which makes it quite easy to work into and work with. Okay, yeah, I really love this yarn. It was pretty easy to work with. It got caught on the head of my crochet hook a few times, I think probably because the hook's a little bit small and just the nature of this yarn. But other than that, it was really easy to work with, really springy, so easy to get into the stitches. It has great stitch definition. You can see your stitches really clearly. They look really nice and even and neat. It is very stiff. Again, that's probably what you want for a yarn that you're using to make a bag. Also, this kind of yarn is great for things like baskets, and you definitely want this kind of structure to your work when you're creating home decor items. I actually really like this colour too. I like the way that it's worked up. So yeah, this yarn is definitely a win for me. This yarn is $8 at full price for 100 grams, and you get 30 meters. So you don't get a lot of meterage for this yarn, although given it is kind of a bulky weight yarn, you will get more fabric than you might do for that meterage compared to a lighter weight yarn. But it works out at 26 cents a meter, which feels kind of expensive to me for what is a polyester yarn, t-shirt yarn. I suspect you could probably find better value t-shirt yarn out there. Having said that, I actually really like the quality of this. It feels really nice. I haven't tried other t-shirt yarns, so I don't know how it compares, but I've been pleasantly surprised with this yarn. Okay, so next we have another yarn from the Bagology range. This is the Bagology cord yarn. Now, this is the yarn I'm actually the most excited about. This is the one I could really see myself using. It's what's called a chain neck construction, which means the yarn is almost kind of plaited into a little chain. And I really like chain neck construction yarns. I just find them really easy to work with. I like the way that they look. And the thing that I like about this yarn is I recently did the Kmart kit bucket hat using macrame cord. And I actually kind of liked how that product came together in the end, but the macrame cord was pretty terrible to work with. It's very stiff, very kind of scratchy yarn. And I think this kind of yarn could be a really great substitute for that because it kind of has that same sort of look to it, but it's much softer. This is a much nicer feeling yarn than a macrame cord. There's also 100% cotton, which is great. It's great that it's a natural fiber and it kind of feels like a natural fiber as well. Being cotton, it means it'll be really breathable, so it would be ideal, I think, for things like hats. So definitely an advantage of it is that it's quite soft. I think it will feel nice on the skin. But I wonder if it's actually going to have the structure that you would really need for a bag as a result. So I will be interested to see how kind of stiff or drapey the swatches that I make up. I do think a yarn like this might be really great for things like tote bags, have kind of more of that floppy look to them. But you still want a bit of structure so that your bag doesn't stretch out when you actually put things into it. In terms of springiness, it is pretty stiff. It doesn't have much stretch to it, which might mean it's a little bit tricky to work with. Okay, so they suggest a 4.5mm hook for this yarn. I'm going to make this swatch with half double crochets because I think this yarn actually lends itself more to a kind of floppy market tote bag kind of vibe. So I think a half double crochet might be a good stitch. Yeah, so I also really like this yarn. It is not as nice on the hands as, say, the t-shirt yarn. It is still a little bit rough to work with, but it's so much better than the macrame cord, but it gives that same kind of look. So I think this would be really great for a tote bag, for a hat, especially being 100% cotton. I also quite like the stitch definition. It's got a little bit of a rustic look to it, but still got decent stitch definition. It's still really easy to see where to insert your hook. The yarn has a little bit of drape, but not much. It's still fairly stiff, which is good. But I think this yarn could be really versatile. Could be great for a lot of projects. Okay, so value for money. This yarn costs $9 a ball. You get 100 grams or 75 meters, which works out at about 12 cents a meter, which isn't too bad. I think this is a pretty good value for money. You get a decent amount of meterage. It's 100% cotton. I kind of love this yarn. Okay, so the next yarn is the Bagology ribbon yarn. Now this is 100% polypropylene. It's 100 grams and you get 200 meters. This is the most curious yarn to me. It is a ribbon yarn, which isn't particularly novel or new, but what is a bit different about this yarn is it kind of looks and feels like paper. It doesn't feel like a typical ribbon yarn to me, which generally feels like a kind of shiny ribbon type fabric. So I am super intrigued about how this one's going to work out. It almost looks like plastic bag material or like a shiny paper. It uses a much smaller hook size than some of the other yarns. It's not soft at all. I mean, it feels like paper. I don't really think it's designed to be, so I don't think it's a problem. But this certainly isn't a yarn that you'd want to use for anything that you were going to wear. There's also zero stretch to it. It's a very, very stiff yarn. So again, it might not be particularly beginner friendly. In terms of colour selection, it comes in 6 colours. They're mostly kind of bright, shiny colours, which again I think probably makes sense for a novelty yarn like this, but not a lot of kind of muted tones or neutral options. Okay, so they recommend a 4mm hook. I mean, I think this yarn could literally just be paper wrapping ribbon. It feels exactly like it. Okay, so this is a super interesting one. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. It's certainly not a relaxing yarn to crochet with. It doesn't glide very easily, so you are kind of fighting to pull it through your fingers and through the hook. I certainly wouldn't call it a beginner-friendly yarn. It doesn't have any stretch, so it can be a little bit hard to work with. But it's certainly not as bad as the faux leather yarn. I could definitely make something with this, it just probably wouldn't be my favourite project. The stitch definition isn't great. I mean, this is the case with any ribbon yarn, really. In my opinion, it kind of gives a bit of a messy look because the yarn isn't very full, so you tend to kind of have gaps in your work, even with a short stitch like single crochet. To be honest, I think my main hesitation with this yarn is I just don't know what you would use it for. Maybe I just aren't quite imaginative enough. If you have any ideas about what kind of project this yarn could be good for, let me know down in the comments. But I just can't really see how I would use this. I do kind of like how the final colours come out. The kind of metallic-y shiny look to it is quite nice. So the ribbon yarn costs $12 for this ball of yarn, which is 100 grams and gets you 200 meters. So this does seem quite expensive, but you do get a lot of meterage. I mean, to be honest, I think you could probably just buy wrapping ribbon for a lot cheaper and it would be pretty similar. It does work out very cheap per meter at 6 cents a meter, noting that it is quite a fine yarn, so you would need to use quite a lot of it to make an entire bag. But definitely I think this is probably one of the better value for money yarns out of the new bagology range. And then this is the final yarn. This one isn't actually part of their bagology range, although it's also new and it seems to me to be an ideal yarn for bags, called All About That. And again, it's quite an interesting yarn. It's almost kind of similar to the Line Brand faux leather one, but a little bit less shiny. So it's, again, kind of strips of fabric, similar to the faux leather, but it's a different kind of feel, different type of fabric than the t-shirt yarn. It's also 100% polyester, 120 grams, and you get 60 meters worth of yarn in it. 6 colors in the color range, not a huge range, and they seem to be mostly dark colors. There's not a lot of light shades, but again, they probably are a little bit more muted compared to some of the other yarn. So I think this is probably a good alternative to the Line Brand faux leather yarn if you kind of like that look but don't want the kind of shiny, bright, metallic look. Okay, so this yarn also recommends an 8 or a 9mm hook. I unfortunately don't have either, but I'll use my 10mm hook for this one. Really curious to see if this one is as hard to work with as the faux leather. Yeah, with both this one and the faux leather, I can't even really pull this slip knot on. This feels really similar to the faux leather one. It's just really sticky. So it's just sticking to the hook, and I'm really having to put quite a lot of effort in to pull it through. Given I've kind of sized up the hook, I was sort of hoping that might make it a little bit easier. And this certainly is a teeny bit easier than the faux leather, but not really. Yeah, my hands are getting super sore, so I'm gonna leave it there. It's basically the same to work with as the Line Brand faux leather. It just sticks, so there's no real flow to it, which just makes it really irritating to crochet with. I think the stitch definition is okay, probably a little bit better maybe than the Line Brand, and I do think I prefer this kind of matte look to the shiny metallic, but it's basically a very similar yarn. I think this one could look really cool if you made it up into a bag. I just personally would not have the patience to work with this yarn long enough to actually produce anything with it. So this yarn is $14 at full price. You get 120 grams, which is 60 meters of yarn, and that works out at about 23 cents a meter. This isn't great value for money. I don't think you'd need a lot of this yarn if you were using it to make a small purse or handbag, that kind of thing, but I certainly wouldn't call it a cost-effective yarn, especially when you consider it is 100% polyester. So my overall conclusions, I really love this bagology cord. I think this is one I can definitely see myself using. I'm thinking tote bags, I'm thinking bandanas, I'm thinking summer hats. I also think this might be quite nice for decor around the house given the kind of color range and the sort of slightly rustic natural look to it. So I'm going to rank this as my favorite yarn of the yarns that I've reviewed today. Closely followed by this t-shirt yarn. I'm very pleasantly surprised with this yarn. I wasn't necessarily expecting to love this one, but it was really nice to work up. I really like the final look of it. And again, I can see lots of uses for this. I think this is also a really great beginner yarn because it is stretchy, so it's quite easy to use. Also, because it's quite bulky, it means that your fabric will work up quite quickly. And this can be really satisfying when you're new to crochet to kind of see your project start to come together a little bit more quickly. And it's also got really great stitch definition, so it's really easy to see your stitches, which also is really important when you're starting out. So I definitely recommend both of these two yarns. I really didn't like these yarns. These are definitely on my do not buy list. Like, I think the final products made with these yarns could be really cool. It's just they're horrible to work with. If you're new to crochet at all, I would stay a mile away from these yarns. They will just frustrate the hell out of you. They are sticky, they don't really have any stretch, and you just end up fighting with them. And for me, I crochet to relax and unwind. It's quite a meditative, mindful, relaxing activity for me. And if I'm fighting with the yarn, then I'm just not getting the benefits of crochet. So these are yarns that I just wouldn't bother with. They're also pretty expensive, especially given they are 100% polyester. And then finally this yarn, to be honest, I don't really know how to rate it. It is kind of just paper ribbon. Again, there might be some uses for this. It is definitely an interesting yarn. I haven't really seen anything like it, but personally, I just don't really know what I would use it for. Well, thanks so much for watching this yarn review. I really hope that you found it useful. If you've tried any of these yarns yourself, I would love to hear about in the comments. Let me know how you found them. There's also another yarn in the bagology range, which is a string yarn, which I didn't grab, so I'd be really curious to know if anyone's tried that yarn and what they thought of it. I'm wanting to do more content like this on my channel, especially yarn reviews, but other tips and advice for new crochet makers. So let me know if you enjoyed this video and if there's anything else you'd like me to make a video on. Also, if you're just starting out with crochet and you're wanting to get a really comprehensive guide to learn how to crochet, be sure to check out my Learn How to Crochet kit, which is available in my YouTube storefront or on Etsy or madeit.com.au. In this kit, you get everything that you need to make 4 great beginner projects, and the kit is very deliberately designed to teach you all of the major stitches and techniques that you'll want to master as a beginner. Thanks so much for watching my channel, and happy crafting!